My parents have been married for 32 years and believe that love is the thing that can cause us the most pain in this life. Why did two people who don't consider themselves to be Christians raise their children in the Christian church? And why did I get the birds and the bees talk when I was only 7 years old? Hey y'all, I'm Reese, and welcome to Making Meaning. This week, I am joined by my lovely mother and father, Mike and Paige Brown. It's the season finale, y'all. The season finale of season 3, and there was just something about it that made me want to do something special and cool. And I was trying to think about there's some really cool guests coming up, but what do I want to do for the finale of this season? And I wanted to talk to my parents. They've each had an individual episode of Making Meaning, which of course those episodes will be linked in the description, and maybe I'll pop some of the card things that YouTube lets you do at the top so you can see them as well. But I wanted to talk to them together. They are in a phase of life where their kids are grown, out of the house, they're both retired, and they're still making meaning. Arguably, they're doing so from a place of more authenticity now than ever. And I think their love is really fascinating. Of course, I am biased because I'm their child, and any example of love or a relationship, of course, is always stemmed from them. But their relationship is one of the best examples of true partnership that I can see in my personal life and in media and other people, which how much do we really know other people's relationships? We don't, but you catch my meaning. So I wanted to talk to them about that and all these things, and it just felt like a special, fun thing to do for this finale. They also are a living, breathing testament of how relationships take work, but do evolve, and that evolution is a part of growing more love. I mean, I've seen that in their marriage, but more directly in their relationship with me. We've had hard conversations. I have fought for the relationship that I have with my parents, and they have fought for the relationship that they have with me. It's something that we all deeply care about, and that's why we do it, because we love each other. And I think even though this conversation explores some other topics and, we get into some more practical things, I think that was really my goal with inviting them on in general, is just to exist with them in the relationship that we have, and let that be something people can bear witness to. Not to emulate or admire, but also not to judge or demonize, just to see that this is real. That this conversation is my real conversation with my real parents in a very real way, because you can't exactly interview your parents in a professional way. So I'm really excited for you to listen to this conversation. And Mom and Dad, I love y'all more than words. Okay, I believe that is all I have. So, as always, let's take a deep breath. And get into it. Hello, Mom and Dad. Thank you for being here with me today. I'm so excited to do this. Of course, dedicated listeners of Making Meaning will have seen your faces and have heard your voices before, as you've each had your own episode where you discussed Making Meaning. But as season 3 has been coming to a close, I didn't have a guest for the finale that I don't know. There was something about it that I wanted to feel special. And as I was thinking about, who should I have as the finale episode? And then at the same time, I was thinking about, I also need to talk to Mom and Dad. I haven't talked to them in a little bit. And I was like, wait, here we go. So thank y'all for doing this. I'm excited.
I'm excited too. Thank you, Reese.
Always.
Well, y'all kind of know the drill, so we'll start with the first question we always start with, which is what is one thing that you are grateful for?
I'll say I am grateful for my health, and I'm grateful that I guess sure my health, but maybe that's not even a good one because my health hasn't been the best lately. However, um, I know a lot of people uh, that aren't able to do all the wonderful things that we get to do. So
Yeah. Well, and I do think it makes me, anytime you think about like, well, I am thankful for this thing, but it's like, but also it's hard sometimes. There's a quote in Perks of Being in Perks of Being a Wallflower where the main character's dad is telling him like finish your dinner because there are starving kids in Africa, the classic thing. And the protagonist is writing and he's like, that may be true and that's really sad and horrible, but that also doesn't make my hurt any less. And it's like you're allowed to have your hurt too and also still be thankful for the other things. So
Right.
it's a spectrum and it's complex.
Well, I'm grateful for our family and the time we get to spend together. And
Yeah. Even virtually with slightly pixelated screens.
actually, I am extremely grateful for technology because we're able to see you all the time.
Yeah.
yeah,
Truly, if that is, I don't know if I would have been able to like just emotionally move far away if it wasn't for the capacity that we have to stay connected and in touch for sure.
Yeah.
Um, Totally. And so it's like in that way, technology really has afforded us a lot of things, not just staying connected while you're in one place, but being able to travel and move and be anywhere you want to be and still be connected. Um, to move into the second question, slightly different than the first time. The second question is always, what is your story? And so, of course, we kind of got into that solo story with both of y'all. But I was thinking about this and, kind of prepping for this episode as much as one can prep to interview their parents. um, but like, what are the things that I know about mom and dad that we didn't really get to or talk about in their first episodes? And y'all's relationship to each other. While it was a part of the conversation, right? It wasn't really one of the things that we like super dug into. So, what is in light of this being a duo episode, right? What is the story of y'all? How would y'all describe your story?
Your dad looks so serious over there. It's just so funny.
just trying to
It's
be
like,
a good interviewee.
well,
There's
you're
no such
misleading.
thing.
You're totally misleading the audience because you haven't interrupted us once.
So
Oh, what
anyway,
a great start to y'all's story.
our story is really nice story, and I
It
think
is.
part of the reason you didn't hear a lot, Reese, was that we spent a lot of our time focusing on you guys, you and your brother, and I think that's something that it's really important to be careful for couples because what we realized is that we put so much of our time and energy and effort into you. We allowed some things to kind of come between us at times and create some, ups and downs and hiccups between us, which it's really important to set aside time, couples to set aside time for themselves, I think. And that was one thing, in hindsight, we could have done a better job at, I think.
Mhm.
But
I think, well, real quick, Mom, is there anything you want to add to that before I
Well,
have a
no,
final thought?
he's completely true, but that's not our whole story,
Yeah.
no, that's
Well,
right?
right.
Right?
so we'll get into more of your story in a second, but I suppose
Okay.
to start with that, because it is kind of the entryway with, me and how I
True.
relate to y'all, Um, I think one thing that really sticks out to me as like this being part of your story is knowing one how long y'all dated before getting married, and two, how long you were married without kids before making the decision to have kids. So it is interesting when I hear you talk about having kids and how much that changed your life, that there was so much of your story before that too, right? And of course, you'll never really know life post, like after having kids. There really is, you'll always have kids now.
Mhm.
But I think that also really speaks to the nature of having been together for so long. And one of my favorite things is when we're at a wedding together and they play the game of like all the couples get on the dance floor and dance, and then if you've been married for you know more than 5 years, stay on the dance floor. If you've been married for more than 10 years, stay on the dance floor. More than 20. And then they'll get to like 25 and it starts to look like, oh, a lot of these people look really old. And then there are my parents, and then it's like 30. And now it's like there are people like in their 70s sitting down, and my parents are still up there, and y'all are always like the youngest people there. And I think not that, getting married young isn't a virtue in and of itself, but I think there is something really beautiful about having been married young and building a life together as a couple, and then entering into the decision to have kids together. And you have been together for so long, it's like that.
But I don't see us as having gotten married young. We were, what, 28 and 20.
23 and 27.
Yeah, okay.
So can you imagine me being married for 2 years at this point in my life, Dad?
Nope.
There you go. Right?
But it's like different because you're a different. I know you differently, right?
Right.
I mean,
Yeah, I mean, everyone's different. Everyone comes from a different life situation.
Yeah.
And you can never plan when you're going to meet the person you want to spend the rest of your life with, right?
Yeah. Well, and theoretically, it could have happened for me in high school. It could maybe not happen for another 10 years or for the rest of my life. I think that's so true. Yeah. So I guess then to go back to the beginning, Mom, you said that is a part of our story, but it's not our whole story. What else sticks out to you that you want to share?
Well, I mean, like you said, we had a huge 9 years, almost 10 years before your brother was born. So we had a full life of so many firsts together. I think is part of what is really fun. And of course, we met at work, and I was a waiter, and your dad was a bartender, and he made Super Mike margaritas, which margaritas are still my favorite. And we traveled a lot. I always wanted to travel. We didn't travel much growing up. I mean, when I say not much, it really wasn't much at all. We had one trip to Disney World when I was in fourth grade, and a couple of trips to the Gulf Coast, Texas, when I was growing up. But that was literally it. I think I remember 3 family-ish trips.
Well, and even within that, it's like the difference between travel and vacation too, right? Like those are very different things, going to Disney versus like going to a place to experience that place. Because even though Disney is in Florida, it's like it doesn't really feel like you're going to Florida, you're going to Disney, right? So it's like it's still different. Well, and I remember the first time Grandma went out of the country was with us for JT's wedding, for my cousin's wedding, which is kind of interesting to think about. So yes, this travel that you had in common.
So we enjoyed that. I mean, we learned all about food and restaurants, and I think we gave each other the support and the space to do things that maybe we wouldn't have done alone. Go
Right.
to nicer restaurants that we wouldn't have probably tried. Um, Mike, what else did we do
Well, we
together? We
also
did a
had
lot
a
of stuff.
we had a lot of opportunity to talk about stuff and learn about each other's value systems and interests and how we felt about kids. Do we want kids? How many? What's our spirituality? Where do we stand with religion? And how do we want to? Do we have a particular set of beliefs that we want to instill in our children? Uh, is that how important are each of these values and how flexible are they? Because when when anybody comes together with another person, when you're a couple or a group or a team or what have you, there's a lot of differences, individual differences that come into play, and you have to respect each other's differences and play into that. But it's great. It was really good for us that we had a lot of time. It was kind of a casual, organic learning about each other. It wasn't forced. It wasn't okay. We've got X number of days to figure each other out, and then if it works, we check the boxes and we go get married. It never really
Right.
happened that way for us. It just
No, we were
What?
very not serious at first, and as we continued to date, eventually I guess, became exclusive, and we spent just a lot of time together. Lots of road trips, lots of talking, lots of singing. Talk about JT, my nephew, whose wedding we went to. All you ever do is sing and have fun and laugh. Would you just stop? Which was kind of just made us laugh even more. But
Right, of course.
yeah,
But
we
what
did have
a
a
because I think kids naturally, I mean, part of self-individuation and growing up is rebelling against like the caretaker figures. So it's like the fact that that's what he found to rebel against. It's like if you have to rebel against something,
yeah,
that's a pretty good one to feel like, well, he couldn't find anything but that, right? Which, of course,
yeah,
not to say that it was flawless or that there weren't um, difficulties either, but I think that it's just really awesome and also really funny to think about a little kid
yeah.
saying that. Um, with this idea of like it just happening organically, naturally, it wasn't rushed. I know, Mom, in me not being someone that's like, marriage is a priority, um, us talking about that a lot, you have always been very honest about the fact that it was like, I did not want to get married. That was not a thing that I wanted until I met your dad. And it was like, even then, this is fun until I was would say until it wasn't. Not that it wasn't fun, but it's like, but that it's like that's not the sole purpose of this anymore, right? And it's like that actually changed. And I think, Dad, I don't want to project anything onto your experience or assume anything because I don't think we've maybe ever talked about this explicitly, but it seems like at that point in your life the idea of like settling down and having a family wasn't the goal either, if there even was
absolutely
like a
not.
clear goal. And so I wonder if part of it is, this is such a leading question, but is this kind of knowledge that it's like, this is for fun? This doesn't have to be anything. It takes this amount of pressure off of it. Like you said, Mom, to really give each other space. It's like that's the
That
overwhelming
was
message that you have space. And I wonder if taking the pressure off of it allowed that to happen more. I don't
Maybe.
know.
I was very goal driven, and I had the things that I wanted to accomplish in my life, and I did not want a partner to get in the way of that. That was just not. I really enjoyed going out with my friends and going out on dates, but I did not want to have someone to share my life because I wanted to be able to control my own life, right?
Yeah.
And so I had my goals, and having a boyfriend wasn't part of that. And I did not want to compromise what I wanted to accomplish uh, for anybody.
Yeah.
At the
yeah. I
point,
think I think a really big lesson I learned from your mom was that this is fun. This is fun. This isn't like pressure. And you see a lot of people going into relationships and they're thinking in terms of, okay, is this going anywhere or not? Because if it's not going anywhere, I'm going to move on. And we never really looked at it that way. We never really thought of it that way. We thought of it, live in the moment, live in the present. It's working for us. We're happy. We each have, individual goals, and we had our, joint goals. And as time passed, a lot of our individual goals we realized had a lot in common with each other. And eventually, and I think, you bringing up goals, Paige, makes me think of this. One of my really good friends was asking me, I was talking to him, I think this is going to be the one. And he's like, but what, don't you have things you need to accomplish? And I said, if we do this now, if we get married, we're going to become a team towards these common goals. Instead of two individuals with individual goals, all of a sudden now we're a team. And that kind of makes light of the relationship. And I don't mean to do that. But what I'm saying is that there's now collaboration, there's support both ways. When I'm down, she brings me up. When she's down, bring her up. And there's this encouragement. And so I really do look at it as a team effort towards common goals now.
Well, and I actually don't think that makes light of anything at all. I mean, I don't want to put anything onto Mom's reaction to that because it's about y'all's relationship, But to me, that is like and a bias from being raised by y'all for sure. But it's like, is that not what anyone would want in a partnership? Is a partner, and for it to feel like these goals that I don't know why I'm starting to get emotional, but these goals that are so important to me, this purpose that I feel I have, to have someone else see that and to say, let's do this together. To me, it's like that is the only reason to get married, is like to kind of enshrine that commitment to one another in a really beautiful way.
Right.
So I don't think that makes light of anything, clearly.
And it's certainly not the only way to have a relationship or the right way. There's
and not to
right
say
or
that
wrong way. I think
someone, not to make light of someone's relationship that is different than that, but
and that's not what I was saying. I think it worked for us and it fit us, and it was quite magical, and I think it still is quite magical, to tell you the truth. But it doesn't. You don't want to also discount or ignore the fact that we are individuals and we still have differences as well. I mean, it's the magic of commonalities and common goals and sharing, towards things like that is great. But you can't forget we do have individual interests and things that we pursue individually, and it's hard because sometimes they overlap in good ways, and sometimes they overlap in a frictional kind of a way. And so, I think you just have to realize that part of the group goal is some individuality. You don't want your identity to be the other person. You still have to have your own identity, I think.
Yeah, I like the way you said that, of you don't want the group goal to be the other person, right? It's also not like, for me, in like theoretically getting to the age where, I mean, like all my friends are getting married or in serious relationships or blah, 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 blah. I say blah, 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 because we've talked about this so much, but it's like when you get to be in your mid-20s, especially in Texas and in the Bible Belt, where it's like it's normal to like ring by spring in college, you get married, you settle down. So I think being surrounded by that energy and really thinking about what I want, it's like it's not just looking for a partner to look at my goals and my purpose and say, yes, we're chasing that together, to have like, it's not just a cheerleader for me. It's also finding someone whose goals I would be proud to be a cheerleader for too, right? It's the reciprocity of that it's like, it really does make both of you a better a better person in that way. Um,
Synergy. I mean, right. We do have
Yes.
synergy for sure. Mhm.
yeah. Hey y'all, it's Reese here interrupting for a brief moment to ask you if you're enjoying the conversation. If you are, please consider subscribing or liking the video if you like it, leaving us a 5-star rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you may be listening or watching. These are the best ways to let me know that you enjoy these types of episodes of Making Meaning, but it's also the best way to support the work of Making Meaning and the Cohere Collective. Okay, back to my mom and dad. One thing that I want to ask about specifically, because I was thinking about this the other day as I've been making more content about like my religious deconstruction / reconstruction journey. One thing you mentioned, Dad, when like talking about, okay, is kids something we want to do? Where do we align on religion, spirituality? I have always been pretty clear about the fact that neither one of y'all, even when we were going to church, was religious. However, it was still like a belief system that was something we held. And again, this is something I know, Mom, you've said explicitly to me before that's like, is, again, Bible Belt, so the framework that is most common where I grew up, where y'all grew up too, is Christianity. And I know, Mom, you said that it's like, well, for kids, you kind of want something that is a good answer for these really complicated, hard questions. And religion serves as a nice framework to build something on, while also like keeping the door open for questioning. Was that what y'all were kind of on the same page about in terms of religion? And is that something that, like, do you feel like y'all used to be more Christian and so raising your kids with Christianity was more important? Or has it always been this kind of like, well, not only is it like kind of a social thing in Dallas, like in Texas, that it's like that's most people you meet are going to have a church community. And it's like it's the water you swim in. So that's helpful. Plus, also, if a kid is like, where do babies come from? And they're 3 or 4 and you don't want to get into it yet. You can say God and you have the really easy answer, or you can pull a Paige Brown and draw them a very descriptive diagram
Okay.
to assuage their anxiety when they were like 9, which I
No,
gotta
you
say was
relied.
what I needed.
I think that's
That
the
was
same
what I
diagram
needed.
she showed me.
It was.
For,
I wouldn't
it
have done
was.
it if it wasn't necessary. It was so necessary.
Yeah,
It's,
for
it's like
Which
I have to
one, her
tell.
or me?
for listeners to have a bit of a framework, I guess, to map this conversation onto. Tucker is my older brother, and so we're the 2 kids of our interviewees today. So when you hear that name, that's who we're talking about. And also this one story, when I was younger, I must have been 7 or
I
8.
think you were 7 or 8,
Yeah.
honestly. Yeah.
And you and Dad were going on a work trip of some sort with Dad's company. And so I was staying at Grandma's house, and I had your brother Casey and his kids were in town. And the only cousin I have that's younger than me, Jade, we've always been good friends, which is always fun to have a cousin that's also a friend. And we were little kids, so we're taking a bath together. And Jade at some point jumps like across the tub, and I start having a meltdown thinking that this means because like we were naked
You're
and
both
she
naked.
somehow like touched me, that I was going to get pregnant. And I literally was having like a panic attack about this. And Uncle Casey called you and was like, Paige, you need to talk to your daughter.
And we were literally in the line to board the airplane. We were in the line, and so I talked to you. Just trust me, sweetheart. it is impossible. Just trust me, it's impossible. Just let it go and we'll talk about it whenever I give back. And that pacified you. You're like, okay, mom says it's not going to happen and she'll give me the answer, because Uncle Casey went in no part of explaining that to you.
Oh, and I'm
Which-
glad he didn't. That
No, he
probably would have been
handled it.
bad.
Right. He handled it perfectly, actually.
I
And
actually, I don't even know if I told Uncle K. I don't think I told anyone except for you on the phone why I was freaking out, which I'm sure if anyone heard over the phone, they know, which my childhood memory, I don't know, but I remember it just being like, I need to talk to my mom. I need to talk to my mom because I'm freaking out. And I do think, knowing myself, one, anxiety is real and it's genetic, it's like what a great example of that. But also, I think to kind of tie it back to this original question of religion and using that as a framework, I think it's almost a catch-22 where you do want a strong framework to raise kids with, but also some kids really do benefit from not just having the like easy answer that is God to kind of pacify some of the anxiety. And like in this instance, not to say there weren't different circumstances and moments where I might have needed something different. There almost certainly were, but in this moment, what I needed was supreme clarity. And so when you got home, you sat me down and drew a diagram, and it wasn't graphic. It wasn't like,
well, you kept asking, and I was like, okay, a girl cannot get a girl pregnant. And
Right.
I explained the whole, reproductive system and all that. And you're still, well, you kept asking questions. And I said, you cannot accidentally get pregnant. It's just not going to
it
happen.
doesn't
Even with a
happen on.
boy,
Well,
you cannot.
It can accidentally happen, but not in the way that I was thinking.
You're not going to trip and a penis laying inside you.
Right.
And that was kind of where we were in the conversation. You just kept asking the questions.
Can you say penis on a podcast?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Can you?
But that really was where you just kept, we were going down farther because you're curious. It's like, no, it can't accidentally happen. And so I had to show you
Be
by a
explicit.
diagram.
And it was helpful. It completely answered my question. And I think also knowing like one thing that both of y'all did a really good job of, at least in my memory, and what, again, anytime I say a good job of, it's like it's so couched in bias. So like just right up top owning all of that. But I think one thing, at least that was really good for what I needed, was there was never a because I said so. There was never a that's just the way it is. It's always well, you need to do XYZ. And it's like, well, why? It's like, well, actually, here is the answer. And so, for instance, the classic, like, hey, you might get cold later, you should take a jacket. And then it's like, well, why? I don't want to take a jacket. And it's like, okay, you don't have to, but you may get cold and you're going to want to have a jacket if you get cold. And if you get cold, like, and then if you don't have one, you're SOL, which you didn't say that to a kid. But, and then later, if I chose not to have the jacket, it was like, oh, mom was right. I am cold and now I do wish I had the jacket. It's like it built natural trust in both of you because it was the just almost like reality of life that you upheld. You didn't treat us like adults, but you didn't treat us like we were dumbasses, that just don't understand things. It's like the idea of Tucker and I not understanding the real world was never a piece of it, because it's like, no, you are operating in the real world. We can talk to you about the real world, but within the framing of like what's appropriate for you at your age and your current state. But in anything, it was like, if I had a why question, I would get an answer. And I think that made it feel a lot safer in the future, that like if there was an emergency situation or something went wrong, it's a whole lot easier to just like take mom and dad's word for it, because the trust there is built, right? If your whole life you've heard because I said so. In an emergency situation, like, there's a high likelihood that the kid doesn't trust that, right? Whereas if the entire time I've had any questions about any like punishment or consequence or the way something worked, sure, it takes a little bit of extra time to explain it fully. But then in the future, when it's like, oh, this is a dangerous situation and I just need you to do this real quick right now and we don't have time to explain it, I'm going to do it because it's like, well, mom and dad will explain it once they're back from work trip and she has the time to draw the diagram.
I didn't go in thinking I was going to be drawing the diagram, right? I didn't know that's where it was going, but
yeah.
I think back to your original question about Christianity and did we use that to help explain things? And I think you've answered that we didn't, but our goal wasn't. I think primarily we wanted to expose you to a variety of life and experiences and allow you guys to grow and make your own, learn and make decisions for yourselves and decide for yourselves, what your spirituality is going to be and what your value system is going to be. We did not want to plug our values into you, although there are some that I find fairly universal.
Right.
We didn't want to plug those in. We wanted you to discover those on your own.
Yeah. And I will say, I think that message was clear to me. Now, as an adult, I'm just curious about, I do think that was the intention, absolutely. And this isn't me trying to like criticize anything, but then why only go to Christian church services? We didn't go to Buddhist church service, or any.
I don't think that was necessarily exactly where we were. We weren't hardcore Christians. I would definitely say we were Christians and we believed, in Jesus and so forth. But we weren't as hardcore as the people around us. And as we learned and grew in our philosophy of life, and our place in the world, I think our outlook on spirituality developed and changed. Also our experiences within the church and how the church related to you and how we saw your relationship with the church also informed our decision to kind of develop separately from the church.
Well, and I don't want to implicate Tucker in anything either, or tell his story for him or a story that he may not want to share, but I think it's safe to say that his relationship with the church also informed that too, right? It was both me and his kind of, so we both had really fascinating journeys with that.
And our relationship with the church too. I think
totally.
that was part of it. I think a lot of the reason, to answer your question, that we didn't attend a variety of religious churches was that we grew up in those environments. We grew up in a Christian environment, both of us off and on, more or less. So that was a big part of that. But I think exposing you to, allowing you to explore and ask questions about all the various religions, and take that as far as we thought you guys wanted to take that.
I think a big turning point for me with, and I had been kind of struggling with what do you tell your kids that you don't really believe in all of the things they've been learning when they've been growing up in church. You don't want to say, yeah, we've been going, but we really don't believe it. I mean, you really kind of discredit yourself. And so it's tricky. But whenever you had that friend, and she's still your friend, Amelia.
I was
with the
just thinking about the same thing. Mm-hmm.
Right, with the Baha'i faith. And it was so lovely. Her mom had the group, you
Girls
and your
of Faith.
friends, Girls of Faith, and everyone kind of came from a different position of faith. Of course, Amelia's family is Baha'i, and you were, I would say, Baptist at that point.
Yeah.
And I see her face. I think they were Catholic, and
there
maybe
was another like Christian denomination. I don't want to be I don't know exactly. I don't remember the
Right, right,
denomination, but
right.
like another Christian, a
And
Mormon,
then
a
maybe,
Catholic, Baha'i, and an atheist. One of my friends in that group
right.
was an atheist. But we
Yes.
still had this Girls of Faith
Group.
group that was, I think it was once a month. We would get together, and it was like our girl group from elementary school, and do a
Yes.
service project, which was awesome. And
It
then
was.
have a conversation about some sort of value, right? Like whether it be charity or kindness or something, and talk about it from our perspective of our faith, or
Hmm.
I guess part of me wants to say lack thereof, because one of my friends was an atheist, but I think atheism is its own flavor of faith, right? There
Right.
is still a faith that there is nothing. Or not nothing. That's a way oversimplification, but you understand what
It's
I'm saying.
it's not a lack of faith.
Right. And I will never forget the conversation, like after the first time I stayed the night at Amelia's
That's where I
house.
was going, and you
Yeah.
were just you really had this crisis because the church was saying if you don't believe in Jesus as your, savior, you're going to go to hell. Well, obviously, her family's so lovely. We know that if there is a hell, they're not going there.
Right.
But but it's a Baha'i faith, and they
Right.
do not explicitly believe in Jesus.
Yeah.
They actually do believe in Jesus, but that's not explicitly, their belief. And you were so distraught that your friend Amelia was going to go to hell, and we had to have, sweetheart, I don't believe that. And I know, I don't think I told you that up front. I said, do you think that makes sense? Do you think that the Bible, do you think God, our God, is really that way? Do you think that all the good people in the world who have never heard of Jesus are just going to burn in hell? And I said, you just think about it, use your heart. And um, just because the church is telling you something, Jesus says, and it's in the Bible, we need to question.
Yeah.
And you question that, and your faith is yours, and you believe
Yeah.
what you need to believe.
Well, it's interesting how, like you said, it's difficult as a parent, which again, I don't want to sound, clearly I have no kids. So I'm like, but I can imagine how difficult it would be as a parent to hold really strong um, convictions about like needing to have some sort of framework for your children, both socially, right, within the culture that we were in, but also like with these bigger questions. But then this kind of, you don't want to discredit yourself, but also it's not as though like any of the quote unquote bad things that I ever heard about Christianity never came from y'all, right? Like all of the teachings that I ever really got were from church leaders, which is interesting to think about. Um, and I do think that with deconstruction, everyone kind of has the first pull on the sweater that starts doing it for them. And I think that was probably mine, is like this girl who was my first friend when I went to a new school in the middle of the year, didn't know anybody, and immediately wanted to be my friend, invited me to sit with her at lunch, was like, no, I want to play with you at recess. And just like, I don't think she even realized that it's like so taking me under her wing and just being so kind. Um, and it's like, and that's the type of person that's going to go to hell, right? It's like,
Right,
how
right.
can that not be a snag in that sweater? Um, Dad, what do you think about this in terms of like y'all being open about your own critiques of the church, even while you're raising us with this framework? It's like wanting to have a framework that you're aware of the flaws in it, but that there may still be some merit in the framework itself.
Right. I think the framework is a value system, and I think there's a lot of parallels in certain values, and I think that's where the church or Christianity in general can help with a lot of the overlap in certain values and kindness and caring for other people and understanding, empathy, that everybody's struggling, everybody has these personal things and everybody's going through something. And so learning that empathy, learning the value system, and I think you've said on many of your podcasts how what we're discovering is that purpose, it's hard to have purpose without including others and the either kindness or helping or some connection to all these other people that we're here with. So that was my view, and my view was to, the other thing is there's a lot of questions in the world. There's certain things we know. If it's cold outside and you don't have a jacket, go get cold. We know those things. But we didn't know the bigger answers. We didn't know, I still don't know, the answers when it comes to religious, when it comes to God, when it comes to spirituality. I don't know those answers. And so the last thing I want to do is speak to you convincingly or with some sort of confidence when I don't know myself. I think it's a critical approach.
I think it's a good starting off point. And we definitely had, your dad and I agreed, okay, everyone, in America, not everyone, of course, there's people of every, faith out there, religion, in America, but Christianity is what dominates. And so that really is the place to start. You start with the mainstream, and the one that your dad and I we were more familiar with.
Right.
And go from there. As we know, the commonalities between all of the religions is huge.
Right.
They all have so much more in common than not. So I think it was a good place to start.
Yeah. Would either of y'all do it differently? Not like in general of parenting, because I'm sure there's, with anything that I can think about, like a project or something that I've released, I'm like, well, I would do a million things differently if I were to go back and do it now. And I'm sure with parenting, that is just like tenfold the amount of things that it's like, oh, well, you just have all these thoughts and feelings about it and wanting to do it as best as you can. But with regards to religion specifically, I think looking back on it, it's interesting because there are parts of me that's like, well, why didn't we just not go to church, But then on the other hand, it's like,
it's important.
And there were certain things about like friends that you make there in the community and learning, like having charity and service projects through the church. And then also,
and just the idea of spirituality is first and foremost what it's about, right?
Right. Like,
and it's such a big part of our life. So, but yes, all those things, community.
Yeah. But so with regards to just this religion/spirituality piece specifically, would you do anything differently in terms of when we were going to church regularly, when we eventually decided to stop going to church regularly, which was pretty young for us when and I think we stopped when it became clear that it was no longer a beneficial thing, right? It's like we only did it so long as it was a productive aspect of our development. Is there anything that you would do differently? And I hope that it's clear that I'm asking out of pure curiosity and not judgment at all.
Maybe a little, because I think part of why we did it was, it sounds like these were all very well thought out, purposeful decisions that we were making, and with analysis. And I think a lot of it was we just thought it was what we were supposed to do.
Mm.
I think just that feeling of, well, this is what we should do. And I think part of the byproduct was this framework of value system, but we were always open and flexible to change. And I think that's why we made changes and we did things differently.
Right.
So would we do it differently? I wish, I don't know. I think we did the best we could at the time with what we knew at the time. I probably wouldn't have locked you in a closet quite as long.
Put you in the pokey.
The pokey, yeah. That's so funny. Well, and I do think it is one of those impossible questions of like, knowing what you know about Tucker and I now, and the way that we learn and how we process things a little bit. It would be much easier to go back in hindsight and say, well, now knowing y'all, it's like clearly this process probably would have been the best way to go about it. But it's like from neutral, from a nothing stance, can you really do anything differently? And I think the overwhelming message is, you do the best you can with what you did. And that has never been something I've doubted with y'all, at least in terms of like your love for us and the effort there, right? Like that has always been obviously clear.
I think for the church thing, I appreciate Mike's position that he just thought it was the right thing to do. I think for me, because I came into the church situation with my family hoping that we would find a church that we felt a part of, because my experience wasn't always positive growing up, right? And I was hoping it was just my experience was maybe unique, but I just learned that it really was. But it's not church. It is any institution made of people. Those types of things are just hard complicated whenever you have all those people and all those different ideas. And but it was a good foundation. I think it did, Mike. I agree with you. It seemed like the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I do think, like, knowing, even in hindsight, looking back now, it's my ability to question, interrogate, and like speak truth to power all certainly started with the church. And it's like, those are qualities that I'm really proud to have, that I think are necessary qualities in the information age, right? So I do think, regardless of the negativities that can come from it, as three people who don't call themselves Christian, it's like, it is interesting that is still, there are a lot of goods that do come from the kind of social aspect of religion and like,
and charity.
Right, exactly. Like
good
charity, community, like grief structures, counselors, like leaders outside of your parents, peers. There's just so much that arises out of any religion, and that's not unique to Christianity. But yeah, to move into a slightly different topic, because we kind of talked a little bit about how y'all had almost 10 years, just the two of y'all before you had kids. And then, of course, kids change everything, and you had two kids that weren't easy. But now that you have two kids that are adults, that are on their own, I mean, of course, we're not like on our own in the sense that, you don't still...
you are.
Well, but
I mean, you are.
I suppose
as you get.
as much as you can be, right? But it's interesting, because when you hear like, well, and they're on their own, it's like, in my mind, it's always like, so you don't talk to your parents about anything, and it's like, no, I'm on my own. But yeah, I still call my dad to help me with my taxes. That doesn't mean I'm not on my own. It means right. I need my CFO. But yeah, but now that you have kids that are grown and out of the house, and one of them is married, I'm not the one, if that wasn't clear. It is my brother that is married. And so you also have a stepchild. Whoa, that is not what I meant. Daughter-in-law. Wild. Total. You also have a daughter-in-law. What is it like? What's the difference between this time that you have by just with the two of you for the first 10 years before kids, and now that you have so much time, just the two of you after kids, how is that kind of, I don't want to say alone time because it is together time, but how are those different? How are they similar? And yeah, I guess we'll just leave it there. What comes up?
Well, for me, in a lot of ways, it's a lot more difficult than I ever anticipated. Uh, Probably because I have a tough time making decisions. And when we were younger, a lot of we were doing what was presented, what was in front of us. We were more present. We were by default we were more present. We were day to day. You set the alarm, you go to work, and you change jobs when it's time to change jobs, and you go out together when you can. So a lot of those things, there weren't a lot of open-ended decisions. And today we have so many decisions and dreams and goals, and I have a really hard time committing. Other than to your mother, I have a hard time committing to things for fear and worry about the future. So it's a lot harder for me than it used to be because there are so many options.
So in this, what I'm hearing in your answer is that like the fact of your partnership hasn't actually changed that much, in that you are still partners that are still constantly striving to share a common purpose, a common goal. Now that purpose and goal is just so much more open-ended in general, that is kind of the challenge.
Exactly.
Mom,
who knew life would be harder whenever
it's
the kids
so hard
are at
to be retired and get to where do I fly to this weekend?
Exactly. Yeah. So the
no,
question
I don't mean to make
no,
light.
it is. I think realize no, it is. I think realizing that time is our most valuable resource. This fear of wasting time. I waste time by being afraid of wasting time. And I don't want to speak for your mom on that, but it's and
we're so different.
At my age, you don't have as many years left, right?
Yeah. What were you gonna say, Mom?
No, we have as many years today as we'll have tomorrow.
That's technically true.
But you know what I mean. We don't know when our last day is going to be.
No.
So having less constraints really makes, obviously, you have so many more options. And so it does make decisions a little bit more difficult. And so you really, we do not have to consider necessarily you and your brother and our other family. Before we had kids, we did consider our families of origin, right? Do we want to move away from our families? Do we want to stay close? A lot of our life involved making decisions with them in mind.
Right.
And then whenever you have kids, you consider that family, but you really try to put your kids in your core family first.
Right.
And now that we don't have as much of that going on, it really is, we're really truly just making the decision for ourselves without having to consider everything. And whenever you guys are out of the house, of course, you live in a different country. So, and your brother and Abby, his wife, they don't know where they're going to be because of their education, right? Wherever that leads.
Well, and they're very much in the first 10 years portion of your story, right? Which it's exciting to bear witness to how they figure it out and how they traverse it.
Right. And so, in the back of my mind, it's if the kids ever have kids of their own, we'd love to be great present grandparents. But we don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. So we really don't have anything to box us in. And so it does make decisions harder. It's like going out and buying a dress and, if you're on a limited budget, it's like, well, there's only 5 dresses I can choose from because all the other ones are out of, I can't even consider them. Or when you don't even have a budget because you have tons of money, it actually does make the prospect a little harder.
Yeah, yeah, in a lot
But
of
that's
ways.
clearly, that's not our case, though.
No,
our
we still
budget
have a
is
budget.
different. Our budget is different
Well,
than it was
right.
when we were younger, but we
I
still
think
have a
Mom was
budget.
It was
using
an analogy.
right,
Okay.
the money consideration being kids, family, future. Well, and like, I mean, the finances of having kids is a part of that too, right? In that it's like, okay, now you have a lot more freedom with like, well, they're taking care of themselves and making their own money, and we don't need to provide for them, so we can kind of take different risks that you may not have when you had kids. And it was like the idea of a calculated risk doesn't have to be quite as calculated anymore. It's
Right.
like you have a bit more flexibility there. Yeah. In this idea of like being in, because y'all are both retired, you both I know, Mom, your journey to retirement isn't the one that I think when you say the word retired people like think of, because you were a stay-at-home mom and you still, you know, went back and forth with teaching dance and all sorts
Counseling,
of counseling. Yes, I feel like there was
interior
another one in
design.
there. Yeah. Like all sorts of different things and projects in there. And for
She's
Dad, it's
multi-professional.
yes.
I'm a multi-professional. Yes.
And for Dad, it's much more like clean cut, that it's like corporate job, retired, right? But being in this retired phase, when you think about what these shared goals are, if that is kind of the challenge now, is like there's so many options, how does the idea of pursuing something change with like in the first 10 years, it's like, well, we are having fun, we are building something together, but the goals are not long term, in the sense that like you're building to something, but the thing that you were building to was like a stable relationship, a stable family, being able to have a stable house, right? Like these things that are now checked, right? Like you did it. And now the next goal is like, there's not really, it just feels much more open-ended. How would you categorize that difference in the goal? Like what is the goal now, and how is that different than how the goal used to be? Goal isn't even really the right word, but that's the one I'm using.
I think our decisions now are based more on quality of life. Like how are we going to spend our time at this particular place? Relationships that we have. How are we going to be able to incorporate as many of the current relationships and continue that, because those are really valuable to us. Make decisions that we can, family and friends can share with us. That's definitely part of it. But it is, what am I going to do at a certain location? Is this a place that I can sink into and find, I don't know, a way to spend my time that's fulfilling?
Mm-hmm.
That's I think I'm more in limbo about that right now than your dad is. Your dad's a hobbyist, if anything. He has all these different hobbies. I'm not as much of a hobbyist, and the things that I like to do require commitment generally. So I'm trying to figure that one out for myself. you know. So I don't know. What do you think, Mike?
Well, I agree with you that I am the hobbyist, but I think we're both in a similar place in that the goals felt a lot more traditional, typical career focused, family focused, achievement focused goals then, and now it's more for me deeper questions, and that's, I think, when I'm trying these hobbies and I'm seeking, what is, what's a greater purpose? I think we kind of had a purpose. I didn't know what my purpose was back then, but I think in hindsight, my purpose, was the traditional kind of goals and objectives. And
or you lived as if your purpose was.
That's a good way to put it. Yes. And now it's kind of like, well, what are the deeper questions? Why are we here? Is it to commune with others solely, or is that a means to another end of a greater purpose? What is this spirituality? So that makes it hard. And I think through the hobbies allows, an exploration and a searching and a testing of yourself, which is why I like doing those things. But it's also maybe a distraction to searching for the deeper truth. Why do these things, where is fulfillment? Where does fulfillment come from?
That's interesting. Do you think it's a distraction? Because in terms of hobbies, you're a sailor, you do bonsai, you're a scuba diver, you ride your bike avidly. Like, there's all sorts of things that you really enjoy doing, and you're a student of them, which is really funny because I don't think you ever would have considered yourself a student, but you really are a student of things when you want to learn them, like that. You're very dedicated to the academic understanding and pursuit. And I do think that in the same way that we were talking about Christianity as being almost like a frame that you can bounce off of. It's like you need some sort of benchmark in order to understand all of the other stuff. Otherwise, it is all just kind of limbo. And so I think in that similar way, going to church was really helpful to be able to say, oh, these are the things we're talking about. I have something that I can push back against. And if I didn't have a framework to push against, who knows the framework I would have developed in a vacuum. And so I think hobbies can be similar, that it's like in having something to, I guess, pursue purpose through, it allows the purposefulness to arise and you can take note of it. Because also, I mean, I don't know, would you say that if you're just meditating, you feel the sense of fulfillment when you're done meditating? Because that doesn't feel particularly fulfilling. When I'm done, even if it's been a really great meditation session, it's not it ends and I'm like, wow, life is worth living, man. It's right. I feel good, I feel centered, I feel aware, but I feel like it helps me do the other stuff, and it helps me better be aware of the other stuff. But it's there is something else to it, I think, that, yeah, I don't know.
That's
Sorry,
kind of what I meant. That's kind of what I meant. You said it a lot more eloquently than I did. And I do think that the hobbies are more of a framework or a structure allowing, the exploration and of the other things. I don't think which specific hobby, I don't think any one particular hobby, has value over another particular hobby. But I do think pursuing something that pushes you or challenges you to stretch and explore yourself, as well as others. I mean, all of these are most of what I do, involves teamwork at times. There's individual work and teamwork involved in most of these. So I've
always said bonsai is a team sport. Sorry, I'm
Yep.
being
No,
snarky.
and it moves so fast that I'm having a hard time keeping up.
That's funny. But no, the point for sure stands that it's not that these other like community and hard work and like all these other values can come through in those things. Um, as a self-proclaimed not hobbyist mom, I don't think that hobbies, while it's helpful to have that to kind of push up against, I think there are things that you do that with that maybe just aren't considered hobbies or maybe don't fit under the umbrella of like a hobby, but you're still very thoughtful in this way. How do you kind of conceive of this thing that we're talking about?
What, finding fulfillment in retirement? Is that what you're?
Yeah, but also like the difference between doing that like with having something like a hobby that is a structure that like you've built into your routine to like kind of check in with. I think that can be
I,
helpful to do this, but it's not necessary in order to find that fulfillment.
so
So
I
what
think
does that make sense?
yeah, I think I agree with your dad in doing things that stretch us, like I was in the band for a couple of years. That was very, who would have thought my 3 years of piano lessons in elementary school would have led to
And
being
your
in a
choir
band, right?
solos.
And my choir, right? So there's that. And that was very much a stretch, right? It was performative. It was a performance. And I have that from my dance and teaching dance. But that was definitely stretching. Um, so I do think, when I was doing CASA, that was something that um, stretches you in a different way. The emotional stress, um, you know, but you feel like you're
Yeah.
giving back in that regard. Whenever I was teaching dance, that definitely felt like I was providing more than just dance to those kids that I was, seeing every
Yeah.
week. Um,
Well, and
but I also go
I
ahead.
just I wouldn't consider like Casa. I might call the band a hobby, maybe, even though that feels almost like rude to say. But it's like Casa and teaching dance certainly not hobbies, right? But they
See,
still
that's
serve that function that we're kind of talking about.
right. So that's why it's like I guess the hobbies that I have is the crafty things I do on occasion.
Well, and I was gonna say
Um,
reading. You're such an avid reader, like in that. I think similarly, like engaging with media is another way that it's another touchstone to bounce off of too in considering these questions.
hmm hmm it's I tell you one conflict I've had since retirement, and I know your dad probably has. I don't know. Tell me what you think about this, Mike. This just popped into my head. It's the dichotomy of we're getting older, the news and everything, the world today is just a mess, right? And part of me wants to unplug and I just at a certain point you don't want to hear about the bad stuff. It's just I don't want to hear it because it's depressing. It's
Yeah.
depressing, right? On the other hand, it is our responsibility to be part of the solution and not part of the problem, right? So we need to educate ourselves but it's definitely I'm having uh, conflicting feelings about my place in society and what I can do to make things better versus oh boy it's a lot.
Yeah. I think that's a
Uh,
really important thing to bring up. And one thing I was actually thinking actually was like how this relates to like in terms of fulfillment and like impact on the world, like social, environmental and uh economic justice, like that is like a really big, in terms of the big questions, it certainly relates to this life, right? Not the afterlife or some, but it's like it's if you want to talk about values, like it is grounded in that, but it certainly, it feels at like the most pressing thing. And yet you can't just sit and consume every single piece of news that you see. Like that's deeply unhealthy. And also, what is one to do? You know, it's like, I think actually you do a very good job of the arguably most difficult thing, which is having the hard conversations with the people in your life on a daily basis. Like, I think that is the thing that a lot of people struggle to do that actually would have the most impact is, I mean, I'll just, as an example, I'm very good friends with a lot of people that have radically different political and social beliefs. And it's really, really hard for me to have conversations with them about that in a productive way. And that is something that I think you lean into in a very impressive way. And a lot of people, and not to privilege one set of like activism or change making over another, but a lot of people might be going to protests every week, donate a lot of money, raise a lot of money, but they can't talk to their boyfriend about him being racist. You know, it's like in the difference there. So I suppose I'll throw that out there to um give you your flowers on that, but also I think it's an important question to be asking too, as people who, like you said, getting older, y'all are still young, but I mean, even as I am now like not a child I'm still a child, but I'm not a kid anymore. I think about like, what kind of world do I want a 12-year-old to have right now? And I can only imagine that that feeling grows. So I think that's important.
And I think you were spot on when you said your mom is very open to all ideas and exploring those things, but she's also, a really good person for dialogue and to challenge you. She doesn't let me just walk around spouting off nonsense and it go without a discussion. And I think that's great. I do think that's what everyone needs to. That's part of this personal challenge, and a challenge yourself to be a better person, to think better. And I do think it's hard to find where to direct your energies to make a difference. And I think that's a big part of where I think we both struggle with that right now.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well,
I mean,
and in where to direct your energy, that's kind of like the crux of all of these things, right? Like, where do you direct your energy to get fulfillment? Where do you direct your energy to make a difference? Where do you direct your energy to make the world a better place, to make yourself happier? Like, it all starts from like almost how you're angling at it. And it almost feels a little bit backwards because I think so often we're told, get the hobby and then find a way to map your purpose onto it, or do the social justice work because it's important. And then you kind of figure out like, oh, this like charity actually makes me feel really good. Do you think that that's an appropriate way to approach these big questions, or should there be something more that's like, no, I have a kind of code, for lack of a better term, that I start with that then allows me to engage with things in a certain way. For an example, I think that's a weird thing that I just said. So hopefully to make it more clear, I was listening to a podcast and they were talking about with social justice, how so many people feel so much pressure to do everything. And it's like, I need to be an anti-racist. I need to be a feminist. I need to be like LGBTQIA plus ally. I need to like be going to protests and raising money and an advocate and having these hard conversations for every single possible thing that you could believe in, right? um
Makes me
and
tired just thinking about it.
right. And this person was saying, pick one do a really good job at that, right? Like whatever cause is the one that like lights your soul on fire, that like this feels important. And the one that he was talking about was renters unions and like renters rights was really important to him
Oh,
as someone who had had a really difficult experience with renting. And he lives in Missouri, question mark, I'm forgetting where, but some Midwest state, and he is a big advocate of that within his local state laws. And I thought that that was really helpful, right, to start with. That it's like that's a really beneficial thing to think about, but also really astute in that it's like we do all feel like we need to be experts on all of these things, so no wonder everyone's burnt out. And I think that goes back to the bigger, I mean, in the big picture of coherence, right? Like social justice is a part of that, purpose is a part of that, spirituality is a part of that. Like we've touched on all of these things, community, family, and then the self-fulfillment piece, right? Like all of these things. And I think sometimes it's so overwhelming to look at all of those that it does go back to exactly what y'all were talking about with the analysis paralysis of I don't have a budget. Where do I even, which store do I start at?
so one thing that popped into my mind was self-awareness and knowing your values and just um, living your life with intention and being aware of your values and living your values, not letting things just go, or not even thinking about the fact that the person over there just did something that is egregious and you just go, I think part of our obligation as a society and to make society a better place, we've got to do better. As you are, I'm hearing that everywhere now. We have to be better. We have to do better. And you hear that everywhere now because that is reality. We do need to do better. And all it takes is to open your eyes and not do nothing. That's it. Just right.
Wow. Yeah, because my gut instinct, that's really powerful, Mom. When you first said the like, I'm hearing this everywhere, the we need to do better, and I don't disagree with that, right? At the same time, it's so hard to hear when it's like, but I'm trying my best, and I don't want to undervalue anyone or minimize that feeling that it's like, but I am trying my best, and it's like, yes. So maybe like take the bar down and hit that one bar really well. And I think what you said about like really minimizing the goal. It's like you don't have to raise thousands of dollars for a charity or start your own nonprofit or any amazingly important things that people do. But you do have to open your eyes and not, like you said, like if you're just out somewhere and something happens, don't just like, well, people are people. It's like that those actually are the small things when I think change happens. And one thing in the most recent episode of Bow Down, the podcast that I do with Dennis, he was talking about like where do men come into play within safe spaces. And like he actually is, as a feminist who is a man, he's like, sometimes I'm confused about like what is a sacred space that is just for women and what is a space that like is actually good for me to use my voice. And I was like, that's such a valuable question. And we really got into the nuances around that. And I was like, actually, I think a really great place for men to be doing this work is when women aren't there. Like, are you only being a feminist when there are other women there that will support you in it, or when you're with your guys watching the game and someone says something that's like, that was a little questionable. Are you going to do the thing that's like, I'll let it roll off my back. You know, it's this guy and I know he's a good guy, but he's my friend and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, that's the moment. That's the time. That's the thing. And I think that that's an easy example for me to go to because it doesn't implicate myself in it. But I'll
Right?
go back to.
But it's true.
I'll go back to my friends, right? That like having really good friends that I have vastly different political beliefs with. There have absolutely been moments where it's like someone has said something like questionable, and it's like, okay, but I know this person and they have a good heart and I know they didn't mean it, just let it go. It's like, actually, no, that was the moment to, not in a rude way, in a hateful way, but in a like,
Even with humor, you
right,
could just express that's not okay and hold up a little mirror.
right. Or
I
that
think
makes me, I now feel weird because of the thing you just said, right? Like, not even
is that
trying to
really
be
what
like,
you meant?
right, like you just said something racist instead of being like, whoa, that is that
Mhm.
what, hang on, you know, like just calling attention to it. Yeah. Dad, thoughts on this?
And I think it's really difficult
Yeah.
because when you call somebody out, you're making you're making a judgment on what their intent was when they said or did something, right? And that's really tough to know where somebody was coming from. Um, so I have a hard time with that. I really struggle with that because
It
it
is
is
such
tough.
a, it's such a, like you said, it's such a fine line, right? Where, but if everybody gives, there's one thing giving someone the benefit of the doubt, right?
Right.
That we all need to give each other the benefit of the doubt.
Yes.
But when does giving someone the benefit of the doubt turn into giving someone a pass? I don't,
Right.
and it's hard. It really is hard, Mike. I
Well,
agree.
and I think, yeah, two things. One, I think it's also important, like, for this kind of thing, the implication not to be like hypervigilance, that every single time something happens, you need to be the justice police. Like, no, that's one, a completely unreasonable expectation. But also, if these are people you know and love and you want to maintain good, growing, healthier friendships as you grow in this, like, work together and you actually want to help someone um, understand things a little bit better, and like if they have a problematic view, like help them educate themselves, like not educate for them. It's like doing that slowly is important, and also like giving yourself grace for, yeah,
Right.
every single time it happens, you don't need to be jumping
But to
on
do
it.
this well, I mean, we each of us theoretically has to be a trained psychologist to do this well. But, back to your example. Hold on. Back to your example of guys watching a football game. The guys watching the football game. At some point, yeah, a sexist comment is made, and then the question becomes, well, is a response to the comment going to be effective? Or is it going to, in affecting change over the long term? Or is what kind of a response will affect change? What kind of response causes the person just to shut down and just disregard you?
Yeah,
And then you're no longer effective at all if you're
I
being
think
disregarded.
I think that's a really good point. One thing that I think I go back to is, like you said, you don't know someone's intent, right? And so I think it goes both ways with like impact is the thing that kind of matters with this stuff, even if someone's well intended. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you can say accidentally racist things and not mean it to be racist, but it like is, and it's like, oh, what is that like unconscious thing coming through there? Um and sometimes it is just like bringing awareness to it for someone, even if that wasn't their intent. It's like it was still harmful. But I think it goes the other way too, that like if we're giving people who are making these transgressions the benefit of the doubt to wanting to hear their intent, I think the work is also like staying open, that if someone is like, put the shoe on the other foot, you're not the person doing the you know acknowledgement of what just happened. You're the person that's being like, hey, what did you just say? And someone's calling you out, which I don't really like that language, because I think calling someone out feels very aggressive, and it doesn't have to be aggressive. Okay. But for lack of a better term, you're the one being called out. Not trying not to shut down, right? And trying to stay open and mindful about it is really important. And if someone isn't necessarily calling you out in the most graceful way, giving them the benefit of the doubt too, that they are also doing their best in this work, like that has to go both ways. And I think too, in terms of like affecting long-term change, this is kind of a cop-out to what you just said, because I think what you just said is a really, really important tension here with wanting to affect change with people you love and care about. But at a certain point with like certain people, it's like, if you're really doing your best to be like, hey, this is a thing that made me feel uncomfortable. I'm using humor and being gentle. I'm, trying all these strategies and techniques. And no matter what, they are just like, oh, so you think I'm racist? Oh, so you think I'm sexist? Oh, you can't take a joke. Oh, whatever. It's then I think we get into the territory of, I'm not going to be able to be the one to change this person. So do I want to be associated with them? Like, I think at a certain point you cross that line. But one thing I also think about is, and I know we talk about this a lot, the sermon that Pastor Steve in church growing up gave about not being necessarily in evangelical proselytizing, which is problematic in so many ways, but that there's a ladder, right, to Christ. And you may be someone, if there's 10 steps to someone being saved, you may be the 10th step and the one that gets them like over the finish line, and you are like there praying with them as they like ask Jesus to come into their heart and forgive them of their sins. You may be the 7th step, and it feels like, oh, they're really passionate about it and they're close, but like they're not there yet. But you also may be the 1st step, where they leave angry and upset, but you're planting the seed, and you never know where that person goes. I think the same is true of this too, where it's like, who knows where you are on the ladder to someone's, there's so many
enlightenment.
Right. And I'm like, I try so hard to not be pretentious or, judgmental or patronizing either, because it's like, who's actually better or worse than any of this? But in social justice work too, but also in fulfillment work, it's like, you don't know where on someone's journey you're meeting them and how you are helping them, and you may never know. And you may not see it, even if you want to stick around to see it, but also it's not your job to stick around to see it, if sticking around to see it means bearing witness to a bunch of things that you're not comfortable with. I don't know. I agree. It's really hard and fraught.
I do think it's a great thought to know that at any step of the way, we are only a small piece of someone's path. And it's unfortunate that we may not see the fruits of our labor, but you have to know that, even planting seeds or a little water here or there still makes a difference over the long term. I agree with that.
And the counter is true too, right? Our bad works, because we all fall prey to the evil one. And, we might do, we all do that, right? And we want to, no, not you, Mike. Well, sometimes, no, just kidding. No, but I don't know. You know what I'm saying? We should try our best. I think trying our best, and not to think we've got to do everything all the time, but just try to just don't be an asshole.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like, is that too much to ask?
Hey, it is sometimes.
It is. And
It
that's when
is
you just stay home.
sometimes.
It's like, I'm being an asshole today. I'm just going to stay home.
But even that is a step better than some people, but also like
Right.
good and important to know, but also like sometimes stay home because other assholes are out, right? Like knowing your capacity and your ability, your bandwidth for things on any given day. Like that's also part of it is even with like the really fun really fun purpose stuff. I think it's really fun to be like, what is my purpose? But I think
Party.
other people may be like, you mean an existential crisis? No thanks.
No,
But
I'm calling that my purpose party.
yeah, existential
You call
crisis,
it
more like
existential
purpose
crisis.
party. I will be using that. That's so good. And that's exactly what it is. It's my purpose party. So, but even with like the more fun, because to me, that's way more fun than trying to like have a conversation about a like accidental sexist thing that a friend said, right? That I
But
know.
you could say something just as, now it's so easy for me to play, Monday morning quarterback, but it's like, that kind of made me feel yucky.
Right.
Uh, That's not offensive,
And
is it?
I think having some good like go-to phrases in your back pocket is actually really helpful for this. One that's really popular right now is, well, that's a weird thing to say. Like that's a good one just to have, that it's like I'm not trying to like say whether
I'm
or
not
not,
putting a judgment on it,
right, it's just,
but I'm
except for that
acknowledging
it's
it.
weird. But it's like, it's weird. I'm not saying good or bad, but it's like, that's an odd thing. But also, like, that makes me feel yucky is also kind of like a good back pocket phrase that's like, you may not want to get into a whole conversation, which inevitably sometimes it will, anyways. But I think even to go back to what I was saying about like, even with the fun purpose stuff versus like the justice stuff feels much more it's just not as intuitive for me to do that work as it is the purpose work. Like one just feels like my frequency. And so doing the fun purpose with all of it, though, knowing that you don't have to do it every day, nor should you, right? That like that's something, even though like with coherence, I've been doing our daily ritual because it's like, don't you want to build a little bit of coherence into your daily routine? I think that is what we should be striving for. But also, like, some of the practices that I suggest for that are purposefully really easy so that it's like, you don't need to like journal for 30 minutes every day. Sometimes you just need to go scream and then go to work. And like
Right.
call it good and know that even if it's something you love, some days you're just not going to have the space for it. To try and move us towards my last question before the final questions, being mindful of time. The thing that I have really been coming back to with both my own work in really wanting to move through the world like as an activist, as an advocate, but also like feel good at the end of the day and still see other people's humanity, like even when like someone is on stage doing the Heil, like literally Elon is on stage doing a Heil. How can I still see his humanity as a human being? Because I think that's really the only way that we can move forward with like productiveness is to see humanity. I'll go back to Santana's episode of Making Meaning, and this quote will always stick with me. It's so powerful, but dehumanization anywhere is a threat to humanity everywhere. And that even goes for the people that you think are doing horrible, horrible things. You cannot dehumanize them back. That doesn't work. And in the solution for this, I do think it comes back to love, which is so trite, but it is for a reason. And I want to add context here because one thing I've really been thinking about is how love is actually not love and light that it is so often couched with, but it's more yin and yang, right? Where it's like, we all know a love that is comforting and secure, or I say we all know, I hope we all know a love that is comforting and secure, that is a mother's hug love, right? We also all know a love that is fighting for something, that is standing for something that you believe in, that is
Fierce.
bared teeth. Yes. It's all of this. And I think that is like the nuance and tension of holding love for other people and for the world that we're in, is that it is all of these things. And if you truly love something, you do fight it, right? Like couples fight all the time because they love each other. Also, you fight for it. So as my lovely mom and dad, who have a relationship that has had waves and peaks and valleys and memories and so many things, but I think the most important thing I want to add in the list of all of the things that you could describe, plus 33 years y'all have been married now, I want to say, right? Or 34. 32.
32.
Next year your marriage will be as old as Jesus. But also a deeply
I thought he lived
admirable...
to 35.
That's when he died.
At 33.
He was at 35? Is 33?
It's only said
The
in
case,
one
like...
of the Gospels, and it's like so not, but...
I just always thought it was 35. It's irrelevant.
But also a deeply admirable relationship to me because of the way that you so clearly evolve with one another and as individuals, and that is a facet of your relationship. And in the way that it makes things difficult sometimes, it's like the bugs are also the features, right? That it's like, because you make so much space for each other to evolve and change, it makes it hard to make space for someone that's constantly evolving and changing, because you're constantly learning and relearning them as you're learning and relearning yourself. But to me, that is like the only way I would want to do a relationship. Again, with the bias that that's the example that's been set for me. But with all of that said, and a little bit of my 2 thoughts on defining love. How do y'all define love? And I'll let you take it as romantic, family, friendship, global, however you want. If you want to talk about it all as the one thing or as a smaller thing, up to you. Just an easy one to like.
It's a great question, and it's something that I haven't. How do I define love?
Because love is not like, I can tell you what it's not. I can tell you people have notions of love, and the hearts and Cupid. That's not love, right?
Well, and even what is it, 1 Corinthians 13, like love is patient, love is kind, love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. It's like, even in the Bible, trying to define love, it's only defined in relationship to other adjectives. It's like, okay, but what is it?
Well, it's like pornography. You know it when you, geez, Reese.
So I think vulnerability has to be a big part of the definition, because it's a
well, I don't know, because
a trust. There's this combination of trust and vulnerability, because we're all insecure to some extent. But I think when
I've never been insecure.
when I feel loved the most, I feel I could say or do anything and be myself without fear of recrimination. Even though Paige holds me accountable, it's still unconditional. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Well, it's like the safety to fuck up.
Right? but also it's not just the safety to it's also this feeling of security. I think security in your vulnerability.
I don't disagree with any of that, but there are so many different types of love. And I can't remember, in college, I took a few weeks of German. And I remember the German teacher saying that English is the only language that only has one word for love, that there's so many other languages that express it so much more beautifully than we do in the different types of love. Because you're not wrong, Mike, but whenever I hear love, I also think of, well, how about the people I love that don't really love me?
Or that you, yeah, that don't love you in the way that you love them. Their definition of love
Right.
is flawed. Yeah.
So sorry about that, but that's why it's almost indefinable because it's so intrinsic to who we are.
Yeah. Well, no, and I think that's almost kind of what I was trying to say with the yin and the yang, right? That it's like, how can something so beautiful also be the thing that hurts us the most?
Right. And that's why I was saying, Mike, that you're not wrong because the vulnerability, right? Because only the things that you love the most uh, can hurt you so badly, right? Um, and I've not experienced a lot of that. But that's love. You know, I'm just thinking of that song, Love Hurts, Love Bleeds. It's like, but, but love is also all of the lovely, fuzzy, soft, cuddly. It is all of those things too, right?
Right.
Um,
Well, and even
but
when I was talking about it being like the yin and the yang, I didn't even think about like the aspect that you just talked about, that's like the people who don't love you back, that it's like that doesn't mean you don't that you love them any less. It's like there's also something, um it's deeply a choice, but it's also deeply not a choice either, because it's like it would be a whole lot easier to just not love some people, but you can't.
well,
But at the same time, don't you
and
wake up every day and choose to love people?
well, and that's like whenever you were talking about Elon Musk and his humanity, right? And even though we may deeply, fundamentally disagree with him, he's human and he loves people and people love him. And hate and love are two sides of the same coin.
Well, and I'm like,
Um,
look at his daughter, who is estranged from him because she's a trans woman, and he has like completely. It's a really, really unfortunate situation that he is like, I don't have a daughter, and
I can't imagine ever feeling that for a child. And
and
so he's got to hate himself.
yeah. Well,
That
and I
does
think
that
too,
mean
like, why is that so hurtful to his daughter too? Because she loves her dad, and it's like the source of joy is also the source of pain. But it's making me think, there's a Carl Jung quote that, I think it says like the cracks are where God gets in, or something like that. Or it's like the wider you break your heart open, the bigger it gets, right? And there's something very much that about it, that's like, do I wish that love was easy? Yeah, but then it wouldn't be love. It wouldn't be the thing that it is, and we wouldn't have that experience. And it's like the people who have hurt me most in the world are the not y'all, but it's like the people that I love the most in the world have the capacity to hurt me the most, right? And yeah. Any final thoughts on love before I move into our last questions?
I love y'all.
I was about to say, I love y'all, though. Okay, second to last question.
We're from Texas. We use y'all.
I love y'all.
Non-ironically.
Right. It's a good word. I mean,
it really is.
Words that are difficult to define, love. Words that are not difficult to define, y'all. Such a good multifaceted word. And also, everyone in Italy knows exactly where I'm from all the time. But second to last question, in light of our conversation and everything that we talked about, did we miss anything? Is there anything you want to go back to? Is there anything we need to clarify? Anything you want to add? Anything that we didn't touch on at all that our conversation would be remiss if we didn't have?
I'm good.
It was the perfect conversation.
All I'm thinking is I'm not sure why anyone would want to hear it. I'm just like, what do you think, Mike? I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it.
I know what you're saying, but
I'm not sure what anyone would take away from it other than we're your parents and we've been married forever and we've known each other longer than we've known.
Do you think that do you feel like this is a genuine question. Do you feel like you have taken away have you, over the course of the last, hour and 52 minutes, you have something more now than you did before?
Of course.
Yeah.
Why?
I mean, if only the conversation with us, right?
Right.
I really value all of our conversations, no matter what they are. And it's a good conversation to have. So, I guess I'm wrong whenever I say I don't know what someone would get out of it, because I watch a bunch of crap and I get stuff out of that.
Right.
It's like, you always glean things in the most unexpected places, right?
Well, and I do hear what you're saying, though, in the, it was not your intention behind the statement was, it's just us talking about us, right? Like, how it's not quote unquote special. But I do think that's part of why I was so excited to do part of why I like to interview friends and family and people is that, so many people don't view their story as special, but it's like, I don't think there has been one conversation on making meaning that has felt pointless. Sure, some have been better than others, but I will say the ones that have been the best are certainly not just the people that are supposed to be the most interesting or that have the coolest accolades, right? And I do think that there's something important about showcasing these conversations, and in spaces like this, there's a lot of podcasts out there that don't do the same thing but are doing similar-ish things that I don't think this is something that is explored there. Yeah. So all that to say, even though you may feel like it's just you, I'm really excited to share it with people. Because also, on one hand, y'all are never just you to me, right? Because y'all mean so much more than that to me. But I think the conversation is special, not just because y'all are special to me, that the conversation is special to me. I think there's something else in that too, that isn't just worthwhile, but is important. Yeah. Dad, you said of course. Why did you say of course? As though it was there's no way you couldn't have gotten something.
Well, I always go away with lessons, more to think about, with you know, additional insight and information to ponder when we have conversations. Yeah. So, I couldn't pinpoint what I'm going to glean from it until tomorrow, but I'll let you know.
I would love to know. Okay. Last question. What is one word that describes how both of you, or one word each that describes how you are feeling right now? And if it's not love, you fail.
Right, I was just saying.
No.
Love?
Right. Or you're not allowed to use love. No, you can use love if that is the right word, but.
Okay, I am feeling motivated. There's been a couple of projects that I've been simmering about to be, like the next step, and it's been difficult for me to kind of figure out how to incorporate purpose in the new lifestyle that your dad and I are anticipating having, because we're looking to do a lot more traveling and spending time, extended amounts of time away from our home. So typically the activities that I do are things where I'm plugged into, an organization close to home. And so whatever I do has to be something I can do from anywhere. And I know with technology, it's easier to be plugged in everywhere, but
you can't exactly host trivia if you're not, yeah.
Right. So, or I can't teach dance, I can't host trivia, I can't, there's things, my typical things that I enjoy doing require a specific location. So me figuring out how to, and I've got a couple of things that, and, in my mind, I keep thinking I'm going to wait until we're in the place to start. And that's just silly. That's just an excuse, that's just pushing it off, postponing. And so I feel like this conversation's kind of motivated me.
I don't think that
just get started already.
Yeah. I don't think that it's silly to feel that way. I think that makes a lot of sense because there is this certain, like, the same way humans are completionists, where it's like we want things to be rounded out with a nice, clean answer. I think that's also how we like things to begin, right? It's like having a nice, clean starting point feels good. But life is messier than both of those things. And so I think that's a good reminder that it's like.
Yeah. And you know what, Reese?
Yeah.
But what that just reminded me of, and I think this is something that kind of it's what makes one of the things that being a parent a little difficult is there's a hard start, but there's never a finish. There's never a tidy bow, it's
well,
you guys are out of the house.
A hard finish is arguably the worst thing that could happen to a parent, right?
Right. And so, and maybe that's what is complicated and tricky at negotiating life after the kids are gone, Mike, is that we have an empty nest, but we still have a nest.
Yeah. That's really beautiful. And as one of the birds, I do like the idea that, like, I do like that there is still a nest, right? It feels good. but I also have faith. But the nest is not a place. The nest is y'all. And like, this is nest too, right?
Right.
Yeah. Dad, one word.
I feel good. I was trying to think about it. I mean, that's like part of me is just really proud of you, Reese, and proud of you, Paige, and I'm proud of Tucker and Abby as well. Part of me feels lucky to be your husband and your father. Part of me is honored to do this. So I just feel really good in a big, roundabout, full, satisfied kind of way.
You know, that's good is good.
It's good to be
It's good. It is. Mom, Dad, thank you so much for, I think, maybe the longest episode of Making Meaning I've ever had. So that's fun. Well, we'll see after all the edits.
I was going to say, you're going to be chopping a lot of this stuff
No.
out.
But thank y'all. And
You're welcome.
Love you, Reese.
I love y'all. Yeah, we'll end there. Thank you all so very much for being here with me today, and a huge giant thank you to my mom and dad, not just for their time, but also for their vulnerability and honesty in engaging with me in this episode. They don't put themselves out publicly. Neither one of them have social media at all. They don't even have Facebook. My dad does have a Facebook, but the name, I don't want to say the name and put him on blast. It is not his name, and the profile picture is one of a pig. So them doing this really is a testament to their love for me and belief in me, and they wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for me asking them to. So I think it's really cool to engage with people that aren't constantly online, like everyone my age is now, and like people who publish books and want to be guests on podcasts are. So I think it brings a really unique energy to the conversation that I'm glad we got to capture a little bit, and just their authenticity and vulnerability. I mean, clearly I love my parents. I could go on and on, but thank you for being here as well. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a like, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, review, all the things, sprinkle some magic on the algorithm for me, and also let me know what age you got the sex ed talk, if you got one. It's crazy that not a lot of people do, but yeah, let me know. I think that's fascinating, because 7 seems really young. It is really young, but it's what I needed, clearly. Anxiety's real. But yeah, I think that's fascinating. So let me know what age you were. And follow the Cohere Collective across social media. Instagram and TikTok are our main platforms, but you can find us just about anywhere. And if you're interested in working with me to find and pursue purpose, please head on over to thecoherecollective.com to learn more about that, our other offerings, our other content, and all sorts of other stuff that we're doing. We actually have 3 other podcasts now that we have launched just this year. So exciting things are happening and more exciting things are coming, and I'm excited for you to be a part of it. Thank you again for being here with me and with my parents, being a part of our family for a little bit. And as always, I hope you feel like you are living more coherently. Until next time, love.